There's a particular kind of silence that only exists in the dead of night. It's a heavy, profound stillness that settles over the world when it sleeps, a quiet so deep you can almost feel its weight. And in that silence, you awaken. But something is profoundly wrong. Your eyes are open, darting around the familiar shadows of your own room, but your body is a leaden statue. You try to lift a hand, to turn your head, to draw a deeper breath, and you can't. A primal, suffocating panic begins to bloom in your chest, cold and sharp. You are awake, you are aware, but you are utterly, completely trapped inside a body that will not obey. And that is when you realize you are not alone. This is not the beginning of a dream. For thousands of people across centuries and across continents, this is the beginning of an encounter with something ancient and terrifying. An experience so visceral, so chillingly real, that it has been given countless names throughout history. But perhaps its most enduring, most personal name is the Night Hag. Tonight, we step into that frozen moment between sleep and wakefulness. A place where the mind is lucid, but the body is a prison. We will explore the terrifying personal accounts of these encounters, the crushing pressure, the shadowy figures, and the global tapestry of demonic myths that all seem to be describing the exact same horrifying thing. Imagine this. The day has been long, and sleep comes easily, a welcome blanket of oblivion. Hours pass in dreamless peace. Then a shift. A subtle change in the atmosphere of the room, as if the air itself has grown thick and heavy. Your consciousness surfaces slowly, pulling you up from the depths, but you arrive at the surface to find yourself in a nightmare that has followed you into the waking world. You can see the moonlight filtering through your window, tracing a silver line across the floor. You can hear the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Everything is as it should be, except for the paralyzing force that holds you pinned to your mattress. It's an invisible, crushing weight, a physical pressure that makes every breath a struggle, a desperate, shallow gasp for air. Panic gives way to pure, unreasoning terror as you sense a presence. It is a feeling that bypasses logic, a primal instinct screaming that danger is here, in the room with you. Your eyes strain, trying to pierce the gloom in the corner of the room, and that is when you see it. A shape, darker than the surrounding shadows, begins to resolve. At first, it's just a smudge of blackness, but as your terrified mind tries to make sense of it, a form emerges. It is hunched, gaunt, and carries an aura of immense age and profound malevolence. It moves without sound, a gliding, unnatural motion that makes the hair on your arms stand on end. You try to scream, to shout for help, but the only sound you can make is a choked, rasping whisper lost in your throat. Your muscles are locked, your voice is stolen. The figure draws closer to the bed. You can't make out a face, not really, but you can feel its attention on you, a cold, predatory focus. And then it begins to climb. You feel the dip in the mattress as its weight settles upon you, first on your legs, then slowly, deliberately, it crawls up your body. The pressure on your chest intensifies until it feels as though your ribs will crack. It is the weight of the old hag, a suffocating, terrifying presence that is both ancient folklore and a horrifyingly immediate reality. You close your eyes, praying for it to end, for the sun to rise, for the paralysis to break, knowing, with a chilling certainty, that you are completely at its mercy. This account, with its suffocating stillness and shadowy intruder, might sound like a uniquely modern horror story, a product of a troubled mind or a vivid nightmare. But what is truly unsettling is that this is not one person's story. It is the story of thousands. This very specific sequence of events, the paralysis, the chest pressure, the sense of a malevolent presence, and the appearance of a dark, often humanoid figure, is a phenomenon that has been documented with startling consistency for millennia. The sheer terror of the experience feels singular, an assault on the very core of your being. But when we pull back from the intimacy of that darkened bedroom, we discover that the Night Hag is not just a personal demon. She is a global one. The entity that presses down on your chest in a modern apartment in London is the very same creature that has haunted the sleep of people in ancient Rome, medieval Japan, and remote Brazilian villages. This shared nightmare suggests we are not merely dealing with individual dreams, but with a fundamental, cross-cultural blueprint for fear itself. And to understand it, we must look not just at our own modern encounters, but into the deep, dark well of human history and folklore. Long before science had a name for this state of waking paralysis, humanity had already created a rich and terrifying mythology to explain it. Our ancestors, faced with an experience that defied all rational explanation, did what we have always done. They gave the darkness a face. In medieval Europe, the entity was known as the incubus or the succubus. These were demons, born of folklore and religious paranoia, believed to sit upon the chests of sleeping men and women. The famous 1781 painting by Henry Fuseli, The Nightmare, perfectly captures this belief. It depicts a woman in a deep, agonized sleep, draped across her bed, while a grotesque, ape-like creature, an incubus, perches menacingly on her stomach, its gaze turned directly toward the viewer. For the people of that time, this was not an allegory, it was a literal depiction of a spiritual assault, a nightly visitation from the forces of hell. The pressure on the chest wasn't just a sensation, it was the physical weight of a demon. But travel across the world to Japan and you will find the same experience described with a different name, kanashibari. The term translates to be bound by metal, a powerfully evocative description of the body's unyielding paralysis. In Japanese folklore, kanashibari was often attributed to the actions of vengeful spirits or yurei, who would pin a person to their futon. Sometimes, it was believed a powerful sorcerer or a demon was to blame, holding the victim immobile as a form of torment. The core elements remain identical: the paralysis, the helplessness, the feeling of being held down by an unseen force. Only the identity of the tormentor has changed to fit the local cosmology of fear. Travel again. This time to South America, and in Brazil you will hear tales of the pisadeira, or the trampler. The pisadeira is a terrifying crone, gaunt and skeletal, with long, dirty fingernails. Legend says she lives on the rooftops, waiting. She targets those who go to bed on a full stomach, especially if they are sleeping on their back. Silently, she will slip into the room and walk upon the sleeper's chest, trampling them and stealing their breath. The specificity of the legend, the full stomach, the sleeping position, is a fascinating attempt to create rules and reasons for a seemingly random and terrifying event, a way to exert some small measure of control over the uncontrollable. From the jinn of Islamic mythology, who could possess or torment humans in the liminal state between waking and sleeping, to the Liderk of Hungarian folklore, a demonic lover who could suffocate its victims with its presence, the pattern is undeniable. Culture after culture, separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, independently created stories to explain the exact same terrifying experience. They all felt the paralysis, they all felt the crushing weight, and they all sensed a malevolent being in the room with them. It begs a profound question. Are all these cultures simply describing a universal demon, or is there something happening within the human brain itself that is so fundamental, so powerful, that it can conjure the very same monster, wearing 1,000 different masks? For those who have felt the crushing weight of the hag, the cold certainty of its presence, the idea that it is anything less than real can feel dismissive, even insulting. The experience is not dreamlike, it is hyper-real, a terrifying intrusion into the safety of one's own bedroom. And yet, as our understanding of the human brain has deepened, we have begun to map the strange territory where this phenomenon is born. The answer, it seems, lies not in the supernatural world, but in the incredibly complex and sometimes glitchy machinery of our own minds. Science calls this experience sleep paralysis. The name is clinical, sterile, and seems to drain the terror from the event. But the explanation behind it reveals a fascinating and eerie ghost in our own biological machine. It all begins with a stage of sleep known as REM, or rapid eye movement. This is the stage where most of our vivid dreaming occurs. To protect us from physically acting out these dreams, from running down a street that isn't there, or fighting an enemy that exists only in our minds, the brain employs a brilliant safety mechanism. It releases neurotransmitters that effectively switch off our voluntary muscles, inducing a temporary full-body paralysis called REM atonia. In a normal sleep cycle, this is a perfect system. Your mind dreams while your body rests safely. Sleep paralysis occurs when this system desynchronizes. The mind begins to wake up, but the body remains in the state of REM atonia. You become conscious and aware of your surroundings, but the paralysis switch is still flipped on. You are, in effect, a fully awake mind trapped inside a sleeping body. The first wave of terror comes from this profound dissonance, the desperate, failed struggle to move a muscle. This state of high alert and fear then triggers the brain's threat response system. Your amygdala, the part of the brain that processes fear, goes into overdrive. It knows something is terribly wrong, but it can't identify the source, so it begins to create one. This is where the hallucinations begin. Known as hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucinations, these are not dreams. They are dream elements, images, sounds, and sensations from the REM state that are projected onto your real waking environment. Your dreaming mind is leaking into your conscious world. The crushing weight on the chest, the signature of the old hag, also has a biological root. The REM atonia affects all voluntary muscles, including many of those you use to breathe. Breathing becomes shallow and automated. When your conscious mind awakens in a state of panic, it tries to take deep, deliberate breaths, but it can't. This struggle creates a powerful sensation of constriction and suffocation, which your terrified, hallucinating brain interprets as an external force, someone or something pressing down on you. And the figure in the shadows? That is perhaps the most fascinating creation of all. Your brain, sensing a threat and a physical assault on your chest, tries to construct a narrative to make sense of the chaos. It scans the room, and using the raw material of your deepest fears and cultural folklore, it projects an intruder. It gives the invisible threat a form, a face, a presence. It creates the demon. So is the Night Hag real? The answer is a paradox. The shadowy figure is a phantom, a neurological projection. The crushing weight is a misinterpretation of your body's own paralysis. And yet, for the person frozen in their bed, unable to move or scream, the terror is absolutely real. The experience is real. The demon, born from the strange and beautiful wiring of the human brain, is in that moment the most real thing in the universe. Knowing the science does not necessarily provide comfort in the dark. It doesn't stop the cold dread from washing over you when you wake up and find you cannot move. It simply gives the demon a different name. It is a ghost created by our own biology, a monster that lives within the architecture of our consciousness. The Night Hag is a powerful reminder that the most terrifying landscapes are not in some distant, haunted wood or abandoned asylum. They are within us. She is the face our brain gives to helplessness, to the fear of suffocation, to the chilling realization that we are not always in control of our own bodies, or even our own minds. She is a story we have been telling ourselves for thousands of years, in hundreds of languages, a universal nightmare written into our very DNA. So the next time you wake in the dead of night and a heavy silence fills the room, remember the stories, remember the science. But above all, if you feel a pressure on your chest, you can only hope you are able to wake up completely.